Hi, I'm Teresa Porter with the Riley Blake sales team, and today I'm here to share with you the Cozy Up Batik quilt, which you see behind me. And we're going to be working this into sections using 4 different blocks, and you're going to make a variety of sizes, but this is your layout. And here's a sampling of our fabric, and these are the supplies you'll need. All right, now that we've got our supplies ready, we're going to talk just a little bit about cutting. So when you look at your instructions, you will see that we've got things listed just a little bit different on this pattern. There's a lot of information, and you're going to want to make sure that everything is labeled accurately and correctly so that these blocks go together really quickly. So if you look at your little tab here, you'll notice that we have our color name, our letter, which will refer to the cut that you're going to be using within the block. And then we have another number and letter here that refer to the Snowflake block. So we have 4 different Snowflake blocks, A, B, and C, and D. And then we've got our cut sizes, and then how many of each of those sizes you're going to need. So here's a reference of how I marked mine. Once I made those cuts, then I was able to take and use, again, our lovely tabs, which we made reference to in our last series that we did. You're going to write these with a Sharpie marker, put them on there, and once you've done that, you're going to pick that up and just place it onto your cut piece. And then that way everything stays nice and organized. All right, so that's our snowflake pieces. Then we're going to go into our background pieces, and we have a lot of different setting pieces within this quilt. So we have different sections. We have our upper left quadrant, upper right quadrant, lower left quadrant, lower right quadrant, and I've just used these abbreviations so that I didn't have to write that out every time. So using those abbreviations, you're going to, again, make those markings based on where you're putting it. So if you were making something for the upper left quadrant or the upper right quadrant, we would then take that and place it onto those. And then when you're setting your quilt pieces up, when you've cut them out, you're going to separate them in that stage. So we're going to put all of our upper right quadrants in one, all of our upper left quadrants in one, and same thing with our lower quadrants. Separate those out to where life will be a lot easier when you go to put this quilt together. So just a little tidbit for you. I found it was very helpful for me, and I hope it's helpful for you. So let's get started. We're going to start with our snowflake block A for you. All right. So I have done the cutting ahead of time for me, so I didn't have to do a lot of that on screen. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with, we need to do some marking. And some of the pieces that I've shown you in the past are our sandpaper boards. Our sandpaper board is a Sudeli sandpaper board, and it's originally done for English paper piecing, but I find that I use it for my piecing. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab our end blocks that need to be drawn the line corner to corner. And I'm just going to lay these all out at one time, save myself a trip, and we're going to draw corner to corner. Now, with this particular fabric, we're going to want to make sure that we can see the line. So I love a white pencil. It's going to be my friend, but I also will need just a dark pencil, mechanical pencil, that we can see those lines really, really smoothly. So taking a longer ruler, I love our rulers because they have the grip on the outside. We're going to place this right corner to corner. Go ahead and find the point, and I usually just kind of place it there, and then we're just going to give it one swoop. So you can see we've got those nice lines that we can see. And again, find the point, kind of adjust as needed, and we're going to draw corner to corner. So I'm going to continue to mark the rest of these, drawing corner to corner. And if you notice, they aren't shifting because I have them on top of that sandpaper board. I don't get the buckling that happens if I were to just do this on my mat. Okay, so we're going to go corner to corner. Again, placing it here, and go from here. All right, so now that we've got those all marked, I'm going to place them back onto my board where I need to grab them. Now, sometimes grabbing things off of a sandpaper board can be a little tricky. So that's where sometimes having a long pin, just go ahead and swoop underneath and you can pick those up and place them right where you need to. And then you don't give yourself a little manicure right up on the board. So I love my sandpaper boards. I use them all the time, and I encourage you to try something new with that. So I'm just gonna set that aside for just a minute. We're gonna come to our board. We're gonna grab our top two pieces here, and as per the pattern, we're gonna sew these two pieces together, okay? So we've got our two blocks, just our little squares. We're going to use a 1/4 inch seam. Make sure it's a 1/4 inch seam and not a scant 1/4 inch seam. If you end up doing a scant quarter, your block will end up larger than it needs to be. Ask me how I know. So 1/4 inch seam is where you want to be, okay? We're going to do a 2.0 or a 1.8 if you're brave enough on your stitch length. With batiks, we want to have that tighter stitch length. We also want to use a micro tech needle with that. So let's go to the machine. All right. Then we're going to take this to the iron and we're going to press it towards the background, okay? So with batiks, anytime we can, we're going to set the seam here just by placing the heat on top. Then we're going to pick it up and use the side of the iron to do the work for us, okay? Batiks have such a high thread count that you really don't have to worry about pushing so much. We're gonna use a clapper. I cannot stress this enough. When you get into those smaller blocks, make sure you're using a clapper because those pieces are so small, we wanna really control that. So use your clapper, just set it there for just a moment, and now we're gonna move on to our next spot. So we've got just two pieces sewn together, right? Really simple. Next, we're going to sew our next piece onto it. Now, this is one that you wanna make sure that we're sewing it to the right side. So out of habit, we tend to move things. So as the pattern, look at your visual. We want to make sure that this color is in the bottom right, okay? So we're just going to flip this over and we're going to do a 1/4 inch seam down the side. And we're going to go all the way down. Use the cutter. And again, now we're going to take this to the iron and we're going to press towards the dark blue, so the background piece. Again, setting our seam here with our iron, and then we're going to lift this up and use the side of the iron to press, okay? Use the clapper for just a second, and I'm just gonna let that guy hang out there for just a second while we get the next pieces ready to go. What we're going to do is we're going to grab, we have two of these pieces here, which are letter F, and we need to make sure that we are doing two different angles on this one. So one of them, we're going to make sure, and this is where you want to refer to your pattern, make sure that we're going the correct angle. This first one, I'm going to go from here to here, so we're coming from the left to the right, we'll go to the point. This one here, I'm going to take off my little letter, I'm going to go the opposite way. So we're going from the meat of the block to the left side of the point here. So we're opposite on each side. So we have two different angles from there. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to come from here and stitch all the way in, okay? So again, stitch from the meat side to the point. That way we're not going to have any kind of bunching or anything like that that's going to happen as we stitch. We tend to eat the fabric if we sew from the point. And we're going to stitch just to the left of the line, okay? So we've drawn our line, we want to stitch, just ride the line just a little bit to the side. Not directly on top of it, but just a little bit to the side. And that helps us control our seam allowance a little bit more, gives us just a little buffer, okay? So again, now we're stitching from the meat to the point. Go all the way to the end. All right, now that we've gotten to that point, we're going to go ahead and clip these apart. Got to back up just in case. From here, and now we're going to take these to the iron and we're going to press them. Now that our little guy's been hanging out here for a minute, he's nice and flat, we're going to set him off to the side. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to take, and we need to press these open, okay? So we're going to place the iron on top, just set it there for just a second, and then again, open that up, but let the side of the iron do the work rather than the tip. I found that this helps prevent distorting, okay? So again, we're gonna come from here, I'm gonna set my clapper on there while I'm doing this, and we're going to just use the side of the iron to get that side open as well. So here you can see he wants to dance up. We're just gonna set the clapper right on top, and look what he does when we do that. It likes to lay a little flatter than what we were doing before. Okay, so now that we've let those sit underneath there, now we're gonna go to the other side. Okay, so we've got these two pieces. We need to place the other ones on the other side. So we're gonna go the same direction as our first piece we put on that block. So again, we're going the same parallel angle that we had from each one. So placing it here, and we're going to sew from the meat to the point on both of these blocks, okay? All right, we're going to go all the way through. And we're going to clip those apart now. Okay, now we're going to take those to the iron and we're going to press them the same way we just did. Okay, so we're going to set our seam on the top, take the side of the iron and let that press up. Okay, move him off to the side and put the clapper down. Go ahead and set on top, push that to the side. And we're going to set the clapper down on this one while we do our next step. So now that we've sewn these little sections together, what we want to do is we're going to flip them over and we're going to look at the block all the way around. We need to keep this as square as possible. And you can see here we've kind of got a little over, which is just fine because we can square this up. So that's why I like to have a square up ruler right by me so that I can go around the outside edge and look to make sure that we're square, or maybe you just have a little bit of too much overhang of threads and things like that. So if you can see here, we've got just a little extra blue, so I'm just going to trim this off, keeping that as square as possible. Okay, and swoop those to the side. Now we're square from the back. I'm going to flip it over to the front side. And I'm going to use, I love these about these rulers because we have this 1/4 inch around the outside. Doesn't matter if you're using a square ruler or the new 1/4 inch plus ruler, which is fantastic. We all have those 1/4 inch blue little guides. We're going to open this up. We're going to place that guide right to the seam and we're going to trim the excess off. Okay, we're going to turn this around and we're going to do the same thing on the other side. Okay, so now we've got one angle done. We're going to do the same thing to this other piece. So again, I'm going to flip it over. I got lucky on this one because it's pretty square. We don't have to do much. Just trimming a few little threads. I think I'm good. So I'm going to flip this over, open this up, place your 1/4 inch to the side, rotate this around, place the 1/4 inch to the seam, and then we're going to trim that little guy there. I'm a big fan of keeping a consistent 1/4 inch trim because it really does help the block lay nice and flat. So here you can see we have our little V, right? So we know that they're going opposite directions when we lay them together. So we've got these two pieces here. Now what we need to do is we need to sew this little side piece to it. So what we're going to do, making sure we're going the right angle, so I'm going to start with this one right here. And I'm going to place this on this side. So we need to place him here. So we're going to sew here to here. And then we've got this one, which is going the opposite way. And we need to place this one on this side. So we can't just mass produce this because we need to make sure that they're going on the correct sides. So what we're going to do is take this one and flip it over, and we're going to sew this down. I've found that anytime I can keep my piecing on the bottom side up against my feed dogs, I actually have more control, okay? So I'm going to match those pieces up and we're going to sew. So we're going to do a 1/4 inch seam on this one. And go all the way down. Okay. All right, we're going to just take this off the machine. We're going to just trim these apart. And we're going to press these towards the background again. So towards this straight piece that we just sewed on. Just go ahead and give that a quick set. Use the side of the iron again. Press that up. Give it a quick set on the top. I'm going to place him underneath my clapper if we can. And we're going to just pull this up here. Okay, so keeping those underneath the clapper for just a second, we have our 2 angles that we have, making sure, I'm going to go like this because I know that that's the way we need to lay them out. Okay, so maybe I did that backwards. Here we go. That's what we're looking for. All right, now we're going to take this section here. We're going to move on to our A section. And we're going to take these 2 corners and we're going to place them, and we're sewing meat to meat on this one so we don't have to remember which side or angle. So once we've done one, I'm going to come back with the other and I'm going to sew that at the same time because thank goodness when I tip this back, if you can see, we're going to miss the excess. So we can do this all in one step. I love a time-saving block. So I'm going to just set one on there to begin with, sewing corner to corner. Again, just stitching to the outside of the line. One thing I got to do, make sure we're the right center needle position on this one. You will be bouncing from a 1/4 inch seam allowance to a center needle. So check that on occasion. So here what we're going to do is take this guy and place it onto the corner. Okay, and come back. And we're going to sew all the way through. Okay. Lift that up. Now we're going to go to the iron and we're going to press this one. Now you could do one side at a time. I tend to want to speed things up, so I always do multitasking. So I'm going to press one side, then I'm going to pick up the next piece, and I'm just going to do this all in one swoop, like this. Okay? Once we're there, I'm going to put that clapper on there. Just hold it there for just a second. Just get that to lock those seams into place. All right, now we're going to take it to our little station here. We're going to flip this over because again, we want to keep things as square as possible. So you can see on this one, I have a little bit of overhang here. I was not as accurate as I could have been, right? So I'm just going to trim those little bits off, and sometimes they're just little haircuts, right? Now you could turn your mat, go to our corners, make sure we're nice and square, and trim the excess off here. Okay, so when you flip it over, we're going to just tip this back, place the 1/4 inch mark right to our seam, and trim. Okay, rotate the block, pick up the other side, and just like that, we have our other piece. So here are our 4 pieces that we've sewn together to make our one portion of our little snowflake. So now we need to assemble this. So we're going to start with our little corner piece. This goes to the top left. Now we're going to play a little Jenga because you need to make sure that these pieces are in the right spot for you. This one is really nice because this is how I remembered it. These 2 kiss here in the middle, if you will. So, and then these 2 are parallel with this angle here. So that's an easy reference for you to make sure that they're getting sewn together accurately. So now what we're going to do is we're going to sew this to this and this to this. Okay, 1/4 inch seam, we're going to sew those down. Okay, remember to change your to a 1/4 inch seam, and from here. All right, now we're ready to cut these apart. And we're going to take and press these opposite of each other. So you can choose which direction. I found that it was easier to press it towards where this strip was. So I'm going to press it towards these two pieces is where I'm pressing my seam. So what I'm going to do is make sure anytime you're pressing it towards a certain side, you're always going to make sure that that is on the top of wherever you're pressing, because then you can just pick it up and press towards the angle or the side that you would like to press towards. Okay. All right, we're going to take that there, put our clapper on there. Now I'm going to do this side, right? Again, set our seam, and then I'm going to press towards there. All right, so now we've got one side of our block, and we're going to take this guy, and we've got our other side. Now we're going to place these together, tip this down. Now I'm a huge fan of nesting my seams, so we're just going to tip this back once I found my nest, and make sure, get that to lay flat, we want to make sure that this line and this line line up. If they do, we know it's nested correctly. So what we're going to do is go to the right, and I personally like a little smaller pin. We go to the right of the seam, we're going to place the pin, come up, and we're going to come back at an angle. That way we've locked those threads on the other side so we don't have any shifting. So now what we're going to do is start to sew. We're going to sew past that seam, then we can take the pin out and we don't have to worry about stitching over the pin. Then we're going to continue to sew all the way through. Okay, just going to match up that corner on the other side before I stitch over that seam. And then what I'm going to do is just raise that up a little bit, take my pin out. I got a little close that time, so normally I would just sew to where I could pull it right out. Okay, now what we're going to do is cut our thread, and here is our first section of our A block. We're going to press this to either side. It doesn't matter which side you prefer, whichever it wants to generally lay to. How about that? Again, set the seam on the top, and I'm just gonna, it wants to lay this way, so we're gonna let it. Okay, so now, just quick little set with the seam on our clapper. And what I'm going to do is show you, we have that first block made. You're going to make 4 of these, okay? You make all 4 the exact same way, so that when you go to lay out your snowflake, you can see we have 4 put together here to make the snowflake. So what we're going to do is we're going to piece sections like this, which will include our E, which will sew these 2 to the center. And then after we've done that, we'll sew that center section together. But let's sew this section together first. Taking this guy here, we're going to place that right sides together and do a 1/4 inch seam at the machine. Now you could take this to the iron and press it to the center. I found that I could just lay this right back on top, and we're right on my mat again, and we're going to just flip this right over and sew this all at one time. And then when we can save a step when we go to the iron. Okay, let's go right in here, and we're going to stitch this all the way down. I'm sure you see the snowflake coming together at this point. So what we're going to do is, here we have that section, and we're just going to press it towards the center section. So I'm going to lay it flat here, place my iron, and open that up. And I don't even touch that other side just yet. So I haven't even touched the iron here. Flip this over and then just press that to the center. Okay. Just let it sit there for just a second with that clapper on there. Kind of just locks those seams into place. And now we're going to assemble the whole block. So now we're going to take our center strip and sew it to the top section. And again, I found keeping the pieced portion of it up against the feed dogs. This is going to be on the top. I have more control of it that way. So here, if you feel like you need to pin this on, you could pin this on. I've found that when I laid that on top, I knew that it was going to match, so I really didn't feel like I needed to. But if you feel like it's a little bit moving around, go ahead and do so. All right. Okay. This one, just because it's a little longer, I do go to the iron, just because I like the control a little bit more. So go ahead and set that seam, lift it up, and press. And I'm just going to hold off here for the clapper for just a second, because I'm going to come right back here, and we're going to sew this one to this one. I love these snowflakes. They are so beautiful, and they all come together so easily. Okay, guess what? I mentioned keeping that on the bottom. I need to follow my own advice. All right, here we go. Again, 1/4 inch seam, stitching that down. All right. And now we're going to go to the iron. And again, I'm pressing it towards the center section, so I'm going to make sure that that is on the top, so that when I open that up and press it towards the center, I just think these are beautiful. And they're so easy to make. All right. So here is Snowflake A for you. That's how easy it is. We've got 3 more snowflakes to make, so come back and join us for the next 3.